welcome again. It's been a while since I've been here with you. Now, I want you to picture this two trees, right, exposed on a hillside. From a distance, they look almost identical. Might be the same height, the same spread of branches, same green canopy catching the light. And if you're choosing which one looked stronger, you could probably never tell them apart. Storms would come, and on that hillside, storms always come, right? One of the trees bends, cracks, and is completely torn out of the ground entirely. The roots are exposed, lying on its side, finished, completely gone. The other two bends, it flexes, bows under the same wind, but when the storm passes, it stands right back up, it straightens, it stands, and it keeps growing. The difference wasn't necessarily the parts that you could see. It wasn't the trunk or the branches or the canopy. None of those. The difference was the roots, the part nobody admired, the part that was developed quietly over the years, perhaps even in the dark when nobody was watching. Well, today we're closing out our Finding Me series in the Now Woman podcast. And it's really the foundation of everything that we're building. For the past several weeks, we've been doing what I call root work. And today we're going to look at all that it produces. A very settled identity. A leader who's rooted, truly rooted, can't be uprooted by what she faces. So let's get right in. To be rooted is to really have a sense of identity so established, so deeply anchored that it doesn't move when the conditions around it change. And that's a rigidity, right? Rooted trees still bend in the wind, but they have the stability and the capacity to flex without breaking. And perhaps in your leadership, that might look like you have the capacity to be tested without being toppled. A rooted leader can be challenged, criticized, opposed, and even disappointed, and yet remain fundamentally steady. Not because you don't feel it, but because the sense of who you are was never dependent on, someone's approval or maybe the outcome or the season. Now, what is important for me to say though? Being rooted is not stubbornness, like, when you refuse to grow, adapt, or to be corrected. It's not arrogance either, which is an inflated self image that, can't tolerate challenges, right? And it's also definitely not emotional detachment, where you pretend that, nothing affects you, right? But being rooted is very much a settled rather, foundation that gives you security to bend without breaking. It's the capacity to absorb opposition without being defined by it. It's the ability to keep growing through the seasons, perhaps that might topple a shallow leader. So everything that we've been building across the series, we talked about knowing who you are, winning the battle for your mind, displacing the lies, leaving performance, and even borrowed identity behind, owning your purpose. All of it, all of these things produces one thing, roots. And today, we're going to make sure it holds. Now, when we read, the Bible, Colossians 2 and 7 in there, I love the Passion Translation, talks about your spiritual roots go deeper into this life as you're continually infused with strength, encouraged in every way. But you're established in the faith you have absorbed and enriched by your devotion to Him. Roots go deeply, continuously infused, established. These are not necessarily just, words of faith that hopes things work out. They're words of a foundation that has been deliberately continuously developed over time. And I think it's important to pay attention to the word continually. Rootedness is not a one-time achievement. It's an ongoing practice. The trees don't send their roots down once and then stop, right? It continues season after season, year after year, pushing deeper, anchoring further, drawing from sources that the surface alone can't. The truth is, the rooted leader will do the same. You don't just arrive at a settled identity and then coast, right? You continuously return to your foundation, continuously renews your mind, continuously feed the truth, and you gotta starve the lies out. Rootedness is a discipline that perhaps you can say is a state of mind, right? Now, I'm gonna tell another story and think about two seeds planted on the same hillside on the same day. The early years, they will grow the same pace above ground, but beneath the surface, something different is happening. One tree in easy soil sends out, shallow roots. There's no need to go deeper, really, because the water, the nutrients are right near the surface, so why go deeper? The other tree in harder ground, is forced to push down its roots deeper and deeper and deeper. Why? Because it's searching, anchoring in that soil. Things don't come easily, right? For years, you'll probably not be able to tell these two trees apart, from where you can see it at the top. But when drought comes, or maybe when a storm comes, the shallow tree, without a doubt, which has grown so comfortably, had nothing to draw on and nothing to hold it, right? However, the deep rooted tree, the one that had to struggle, for everything that is further down, would have found water that could not have been easily reached, and would most definitely. And the truth is, the hard seasons of our life, they shape our roots, not necessarily working against us. Because sometimes, culture will tell us, well, what happened to you? And, you're this thing, it's like, you're not what happened to you. You're not even the things you did yourself. You're not your mistakes. All those things that we pass through, the challenges, they somehow help us to become who, we're meant to be shaped or molded us. I guess perhaps depending on your mindset. Your mindset is looking at it as in, hey, these are not working against me. It can actually help me to develop stronger roots, such as help me to be resilient, help me to be focused, maybe help me to be more, empathetic towards others, more understanding towards others. Or you can look at it, with a victim mentality. Well, each mindset will produce a specific kind of way. When I say produce, way, I mean your mindset will determine what kind of roots you have. The truth is, rooted leaders always lead differently. There's a quality, that most enduring leaders share, and I don't mean charisma or intelligence or, they're really good at strategy. They may have all of those things, but the most enduring leaders have good, strong roots. It's a steadiness that doesn't depend on circumstances. And it really changes everything about how they lead. The shallow rooted leader perhaps is easily destabilized by criticism, right? You get criticized and you're shaking for days. Um, Changes direction based on, like, I guess, the loudest voice in the room rather than, the real conviction that is in your heart. Shallow leaders can't really weather long seasons of opposition or slow results. It's like there's this need for constant external validation to keep going. Likewise, it can end up, you know, creating anxious cultures because the leader herself is not settled. And therefore, it's hard for other people to settle around you or those that you lead. Whilst a rooted leader will easily absorb criticism, well, you can weigh it, take whatever is useful, and still remain steady, right? You can hold your position under pressure, not necessarily being rigid, but with the security in knowing that, hey, I can flex a little bit, I can bend a little bit, I can pivot a little bit, but I don't have to abandon my foundations. Rooted leaders endures, right? They can endure long seasons of challenges, difficulties, you name it, because the sense of purpose does not depend on immediate results. And they also create really settled, secure cultures because the people you lead, borrow the stability that you have perhaps before they can develop their own. Now, we have talked about Nelson Mandela earlier in this series, and I want us to return to him again here because his story is the definition of rootedness. I mean, 27 years in prison, conditions specifically designed to uproot a person's sense of self. And what is remarkable is not that he survived it, but that he emerged more rooted than even when he went in. He used the hard soil, the isolation, the deprivation, the years, right, that went by. They did not erode his identity. They simply forced his roots to go deeper. So when he finally walked free and, handed the impossible task of leading what you'd call a fractured nation, he led from that place of being settled, that steadiness that couldn't be shaken because he had already survived the worst that could be thrown at it. The hardest season of his life produced the deepest roots of his leadership, and yours can do the same. So, what are some signs that, perhaps your roots are not as deep? These, my friends, are honest indicators. So, one is your sense of yourself as a leader perhaps rises and falls dramatically depending on maybe recent feedback or recent results. You change your position or your decisions based on who expressed maybe the strongest opinion rather than the conviction that you must lead with. Never already share this. Long decisions of difficulty make you question whether you should be leading at all, right? Maybe you need frequent reassurance to keep going. And when it's absent, perhaps maybe your confidence drains a little quickly. You find that the storms of your leadership leave you depleted for far longer than they should. Well, none of these mean that you're not called to be a leader. That's what I'm saying. They just simply mean that your root is still developing. And the good news about that is our roots can always go and grow deeper. So here's the hardest truth in this entire series. The seasons that produce the deepest roots are the seasons we most desperately want to avoid, myself included, right? Because we're all human. Nobody chooses drought. So, like, nobody would ask for, hey, give me a storm. Like, nobody volunteers for the hard soil, right? We want good ground, maybe even easy sometimes, comfortable conditions, the approval value. I mean, yeah, sometimes it's good to have people say, hey, well done. But in our pursuit of this easy ground, if you will, we can often avoid the very experiences that would have or could have rooted us. So if you think about the mindsets that keeps us shallow, um, for example, interpreting, difficulties as sign that you're on the wrong path. No. Sometimes it's often the exact thing developing your capacity to stay on the right one, right? We seek comfort, we're in our comfort zone and we call it wisdom. Well, that's just simply avoiding maybe hard conversations, hard decisions that we have to make as leaders, or, hard seasons, perhaps. Well, self-care. Well, sometimes we need rest, but sometimes what we need the most is roots. Sometimes I think we just want the strength without necessarily going through the process that it takes to produce it. Um, admiring rooted leaders, but not accepting that, hey, their rootedness has come from, going further down in the soil, that we are unwilling sometimes to go in, right? When we read James 1, verses 2 through 4, it talks about, hey, great, consider a great joy, right, when you face all kinds of trials. Because when you understand these, testing of your faith, it produces endurance. And then as your endurance grows even stronger, it releases um, perfection into every part of your being until you become mature and complete, lacking in nothing. Lacking in nothing. That's a promise on the other side of the hard soil, not a life without storms, right? The root systems that's deep lose their power to uproot you. The now woman does not waste her hard season. You let the hard season do the work. The 7 ways, or several ways rather, rootedness or its absence shows up in, real terms when it comes to leadership. So think about these things. 2 leaders receiving the same criticism. One is derailed for a fortnight, the other weighs it, takes what's true, leads the rest and back to full strength by the next morning. The difference is roots. 2 leaders may face the same long, discouraging season, perhaps with no visible results even, and then one gives up without even, thinking about it. Perhaps telling herself, well, maybe it was never meant to be. But the other keeps going, because they have that conviction that, hey, this is what I'm meant to be doing. So not requiring on external evidence, but knowing that this is where my focus is set. The difference is roots. 2 leaders may be opposed by people that they respect. One will completely abandon their position to, restore the relationship, but the other will maybe hold their ground with grace and willing to be misunderstood sometimes and willing to restore the relationship. The difference again is root. So in every case, the visible difference is behavior, but the actual difference is what has been developed beneath that surface, right? So some questions to think about as you reflect and answer these honestly. Think about the hardest season of your leadership so far. What would you say is developed in you that perhaps an easier season never could have? And have you thanked God for the roots that it's produced? Second question, where are your roots currently shallow? In what specific areas does your stability perhaps still depend heavily on external validation or perhaps favorable conditions? Just a thought. Question 3. What would change about how you lead this week if you completely felt settled, unshakable regardless of feedback, results, or maybe even opposition, right? And question number 4. Are you currently, perhaps avoiding a hard but necessary season? Maybe it's a difficult conversation, a difficult challenge decision you have to make. These are all great seasons of growth. But because you're choosing comfortable ground, you're choosing to not grow deep roots. I have some challenges for us this week to think about. Write down the hardest season you've walked through as a leader. Next to it, list everything that you know it has produced in you. The strength, maybe the wisdom, the capacity, rootedness. And read it out aloud. The more you rooted, the more you'd realize, hey, actually, it's not such a bad thing. Because the truth is, you're more rooted than you actually give yourself credit for. Challenge 2 is identify one area where your stability currently depends on external validation. This week, make one decision in that area from a settled conviction without seeking validation, reassurance. Try standing on your own roots for a change. And then, this is one of my favorite. Write down your rootedness declaration. Begin with, I am rooted. I know who I am, and I will not be uprooted by dot, dot, dot. What is this? Fill in those specific storms that perhaps you're choosing to no longer be moved by. Speak it aloud, date it, and return to this whenever perhaps the winds take up. Right? Your rooted is declaration from today. You have to keep it visible and perhaps return to it time and time and time again. And try and build what I call roots evidence record. It's simply a written account of every hard decision that you've survived and what it has produced. Because when the next time comes, you can go back and see, wow, God, you've already done this in my life, right? Or maybe when you have faced criticism or opposition, before you react, think, hey, perhaps is this, feedback that would correct me, help me to grow deeper in my roots, or would it uproot me, right? If it's correction that will help you grow deeper in your roots, then take it. Take it. And then finally read Colossians 2:7, right? So some quotes to think about. The hard seasons that shaped your roots, they were never working against you. They were making you unshakable. A rooted leader bends in the storm. She does not break, and when it passes, she just keeps growing. Finally, you're more rooted than you think. You survived every storm so far, and the roots are the proof. So as we, close or wrap this up, some final food for thoughts. We started this series with a question. Who are you when nobody's watching? And across these weeks, we have, you know, done the slow, unglamorous, essential work of answering it, knowing who you are, winning the battle for your mind, displacing the lies, leaving performance behind, borrowed identity behind, owning your purpose. And today, we've been talking about becoming rooted. This is the foundation. Everything else that you build, whether it's courage, whether it's vision, self-awareness, healing, legacy, forward movement, all of that is built on the woman you've become through these series. The woman who knows who she is. And here's the truth I want to leave you with. The storms are not finished because life happens, right? There probably will be more. It's not a question of if, it's more a question of when. There might be more criticism, there might be more opposition, more long seasons without visible fruit. These are not signs that you're failing. It's actually a condition of every leader who's building something that truly matters. But you're not the same woman you are when you started. Your roots have gone deeper, and a rooted woman cannot be uprooted by what she faces. So, I want to speak this to you. And I want you to take it as the declaration of who you've become. You know who you are. You've won the battle for your mind. And you will keep winning it daily. You've named the lies and replaced them with the truth. You've left performance behind. You've taken off that bird identity. You know your purpose and you own it. The one that was planned long before you were born. And now you're rooted, settled, unshakable in who you are. You are the now woman, and the foundation is finally solid. So, in closing, my question is, now that you know who you are, what are you going to build on it? So, this series was the foundation, but what you do with it now is what truly matters. So I want to invite you to subscribe to the Nation's One podcast on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this from, so you never miss a Tuesday. And if this Finding Me series has done something real, tangible in your leadership, then leave us a review. Write to us and tell us. It's the most powerful way to help another woman find this conversation and begin her own root work as well. And maybe you want to bring the Now Woman Leadership Framework, maybe to your organization, to your conference, or your leadership team, then visit nationsofone.com and get in touch. And above all else, share this episode, this whole series, with a leader in your world who's been building impressive branches, perhaps on shallow roots. She needs this foundation as much as you do, or did, shall I say. And next week, we begin a brand new series, all in this Now Woman journey. We've spent these past weeks learning who you are. Now we build on it. The next thing we build is resilience, the capacity to remember who you are even when everything around you is trying to make you forget. And trust me, that does happen. Remember, you're a woman called to lead. To do that with discipline, not just by dreaming it. Know who you are. Remember you're rooted. You can't be uprooted by what you face. So, until I come your way again next week, stay faithful, stay focused, and above all, be all in. And that's all for this week.